Hello friends, welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast where the East meets West. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Motley. Today I'm in London at the Health Optimization Summit and I just met a good friend, Alex Burks, who has created a company known as Suji. And I want to talk about the name too. I really want to go the meaning behind the name. And we're talking about a targeted compression therapy. So in this podcast, we want to talk about how he's using technology to help, I'm going to let him explain it, to help muscular healing, to help the joints, to help many aspects of your health by actually rehabilitating vascular flow. And that's just one aspect of it. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm telling you, there are many people that watch Ancient Health Podcasts and in the office, truly working with a lot of individuals that have, I do Chinese medicine, and there's a lot of organ issues. There's a lot of like parasites and mold and yeast and that aspect. But one of the things I like to use is to use muscular strength analysis. Like I'll do a lot of muscle resistance training to see if a muscle's turned on or off. All that to say is, I just know there's a huge correlation between how weak a muscle is, like around the shoulders, around the hips and the knees, and that can lead me to like maybe there's some organ imbalance because there's that neurological connection, which makes it so fascinating to me that the nerves are all interconnected, like we're one big unit. That's why I'm excited that we got to talk. I looked over your website and I looked at everything you did and I was like, this guy is a smart guy. First of all though, for people out there, we want to cover all grounds, but we want to hear about you though. I'd love to hear about your story, your background. We had a great conversation. I want to continue it. So tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, so my background kind of combines sport, health and well-being, and engineering. So as a junior, I used to box, was sort of recognized nationally for doing so, won some national titles, 13 to 18 as a junior. And at 18, I made the decision to kind of stop and go the university route. Honestly, I was just sick of being punched in the face and wanted to kind of pursue my university acceptance. So moved to Edinburgh and I studied robotic engineering. Graduated with that, but unfortunately sort of halfway through my studies, but just playing sport recreationally, I completely snapped my knee. So tibia, ACL, meniscus, all at once. That was 2 operations and quite an extended period of rehabilitation. My operations were amazing. We're really fortunate here in the UK to have National Health Service, so it cost nothing, which was nice. And it was amazing. The surgical outcomes were fantastic. Was massively disappointed, let down though, post-operatively, where the approach was just like, hey, do nothing, like just rest. With my background in sport, I kind of knew like that's the worst thing I can do, right? If you go to a professional sports training room facility, one of the reasons these athletes return to sport so quickly is as soon as pain and swelling reduce, they will load athletes, even post-surgically, when I say load, resistance train, in a way that doesn't compromise the surgery or injury as soon as possible. Because they know that if you allow there to be a degradation of bone density, tendon strength, muscle strength, and also with extended periods of time off, even neuromuscular coordination, you will extend and prolong the period of rehabilitation substantially. And going through this process, I was really fortunate that I still had contacts in sport, and so that's where I actually went and did my rehabilitation instead of the traditional physical therapy route. And I had my brace off in 6.5 weeks instead of 16. I was back running in 6 months instead of 18 months because of the type of injury I had was more like a car crash victim than it was like a typical sports injury. Like it was quite a serious trauma injury. And so this really opened my eyes though to why a lot of people, particularly elder people, where they're fighting the aging process of muscular breakdown, become so hereditary, right? As soon as joint pain or joint stiffness comes on, or they have a horrific knee break or hip replacement, we all know an elder person who's had a hip break that then led to significant health complications in the preceding years. I realized that one of the reasons for this is the rhetoric around just do nothing. That kind of intentional direction to just do nothing is causing a significant, particularly for prolonged periods of time, is causing a significant degradation in muscular health. And the thesis that really got me passionate about Suji was this idea that muscular health is kind of the forgotten vital health indicator. And I believe it's just as important as sleep, nutrition, hydration. It's right up there, or arguably just below those two. Because it's going to be the biggest predictor of your quality of life as you age. It's going to dictate if you're mobile, able to live independently. It's tightly correlated with your risk of cardiovascular disease. And actually, there's a lot of research now suggesting that degradation of your muscular strength, particularly grip strength and quadricep strength, can be a strong predictor of all-cause mortality. And so it's really tightly coupled to health span, quality of life, cardiovascular risk. And I don't think it's helpful that people are really not consciously aware of how important their muscular health is. Wow. And during my rehabilitation, I was introduced to something that we call targeted compression training. It's scientifically known as blood flow restriction training. And the premise of this is you wear a compression garment at the top of the limb, usually on both limbs at the same time, so it could be both legs, both arms. It compresses the limb to regulate blood flow during very low intensity exercise, something as simple as walking, body weight squats, lunges. And the benefits of this are that you can achieve a significant reduction in pain sensitivity in the joints, for joint pain and joint stiffness. You can build muscular strength and muscle mass close to the same, very, very similar to normal high intensity resistance training. But in a capacity where you're literally doing compression walking or lunges or squats. So if you're post-surgical, if you're injured, if you have some sort of reason or contraindication to normal high-intensity exercise, this is a fantastic alternative to use to ensure that you're continuing to improve that kind of muscular health. And so really understanding this thesis, being passionate about the space, and then having my kind of background in engineering, the three things kind of just came perfectly together, where I was like, when I graduated, a year and a half after graduation, I started the company because I'm just passionate about the space. I want to do something in it. I've had a personal experience where I've become so aware of how important this is. And that was really the founding of Suji and kind of my background.
I'm just thinking in my head, it's like when you have personal experience about how this actually affects your life, because I think that's the best, I say products or best therapies are those that are sprung forward from somebody who's actually been through something. And one of the things that we talked about was how when somebody, like you say, going up the stairs, exercising, or post-operative, one aspect too that a lot of my patients have is like, you're right, they're just afraid of not being mobile in their life.
Yep.
And even if a person, like my mom had a stroke a few years ago, we talked about that, and she has some semi-paralysis on one side.
Yep.
But a lot of times patients come in and they just get stiff, and it's a middle to a bit, maybe in their 50s or 60s or 70s, and they're just getting super stiff, and they never really correlate that with muscular strength, like their health. Can you touch a bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's like a kind of rhetoric change, and I think that comes also somewhat generationally. I know that even if I look towards my parents, there was one point where there was a rhetoric that strength training would stunt your growth and it was bad for you.
Yeah, I heard that.
Right? And so and we know that's not true. Ironically, it's actually better for your health span and your quality of life. And this makes total sense, because I think when you strip it down, I'll strip it down as a dumb engineer, right? To me, your body is essentially a meat sack, right? Which has bones, tendons, muscles, ligaments, and a neuromuscular system coordinating all of this to keep you mobile. And when you really think about this, it becomes so obvious that if you have weak bone density, if you have poor tendon strength or poor muscular strength or a poor neuromuscular coordination, that compromises your entire ability to be mobile. Yeah. And so you want to increase the load capacity of all of these things. The way to do that is progressively strengthening them. Now, where I think people can sometimes turn off with the idea of muscle strengthening or strength training is they immediately think of Arnold Schwarzenegger or bodybuilding. And that's just really not what I'm trying to communicate, or what I think a lot of practitioners or healthcare professionals try and talk about. What they're talking about is a progressive overload effect, slowly progressing resistance training so that you continue to increase the load capacity of your musculoskeletal system, essentially. That's it. And that could be, for some people, if you're an elite athlete, but back squatting or deadlifting or lunging a ridiculous amount of weight in the gym so you can turn up and walk onto a football field or whatever, tennis court. For a 65-year-old, 70-year-old, that could literally be a weighted vest going for a walk with your dog, or doing some very simple dumbbell exercises so that you continue to offset the impact that aging is going to have as it kind of, you lose your muscular health as you age rapidly as you go up the aging curve as well. And so I think it's just bringing that conscious awareness back. Like, hey, when people talk about strength training, it doesn't have to mean strict bicep curls in the gym, looking jacked like Arnie. It can literally just be doing this one thing that increases your muscular load capacity so you live longer and more comfortably. And it will reduce your experience with pain and stiffness too, like, you know, if you do it properly.
That's like, correct me if I'm wrong though, I think that one of the things that really surprised me is like even in physiology like classes, they would talk about how your muscles become tendon or they turn into tendon and they're attached to bone. And when we talk about load bearing, I would never have associated bone strength or density with muscle strength, but in the physiology class, like the contraction force of the muscle pulling on the bone surface actually strengthening your bone.
Well, I mean, it's like, to me, that's really obvious as an engineer.
Like, because your mind's like,
it's just kind of like load tolerances and structures. It's kind of like, well, yeah, duh. But like, I understand that that requires you to think to sort of second level or derivative thinking. It's not the immediate thought that you're considering. And I also understand for a lot of people, their experience with strength training has often been overloading themselves way too quick, which will cause pain because you're exceeding your load capacity. And so one thing that, again, a lot of people don't realize is one of your primary modifiable risk factors associated with joint pain is strengthening your musculature. And so, joint pain is the #1 cause of disability worldwide. It affects broadly 1 in 2 American adults. That increases to more like 2 in 3 as people get more active, which sounds counterintuitive to now what I'm saying, but if you bear with me, a lot of people don't do the necessary strength training to accompany the level of activity they do. So if you're a big runner, there's still a requirement of you to do at least a minimal amount of strength training to tolerate the increases in volume as you run, because you're continuing to add more load to the body. And it's that balance that people kind of, I think sometimes again, just don't have that conscious awareness of that. If you think of your sort of pain response, your pain sensitivity as a sort of a temperature gauge, that temperature being load in this instance, which could be increasing distance you run, the work rate that you do as you run, or the intensity at which you run at. I'm taking running because I think everybody can understand that as a conceptual model. You're increasing the temperature, you're increasing the load on your body. And if you don't increase the temperature gauge, you'll get to a point where you exceed it, which is where that pain response will come on.
That's a great
And so the thing that I would love people to really take away as they think about their muscular health, particularly as it relates to pain and stiffness, again, broad strokes, broadly speaking, is if you're doing an activity, and that activity for some people can just be, playing with the grandkids and going for walks every day, but you're increasing your walking distance, or you're increasing the frequency, or some way increasing the load, or if you're an elite sports person who likes to run ultra marathons, both of you require, relative to your own level of activity, the ability to increase your load capacity as your volume increases. The other thing you've got going against you as you age as well is you could keep the load consistent, but because your body's breaking your musculature down as you age, strength training will offset that so you can keep the same level of activity. And so again, like that's where I think people just, if they can connect those two things, their experience with joint pain stiffness will generally come down as long as they implement it correctly. And their ability to stay mobile and be active will increase for sure.
And isn't it surprising though that, I don't know how it is here in the UK, but in the US, doctors, and no way am I talking bad about any doctors, I'm just saying they don't really teach their patients that concept. And to me, like an engineer's mind's like, if you want to continue doing this, you better increase this or modify this.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get it. I always try and look at this like top down, bottom up. So an example here would be in the UK specifically, and I think broad strokes in the US as well, they're seeing such a volume of patients that they almost have to take like a public health approach to it, which is really leaning on statistics. It's basically saying, what is some advice or intervention we can give broad strokes to when we only have a 15-minute, 30-minute conversation with one individual and we can't tap into their psychology, their motivations, like how compliant is this person going to be versus someone else?
That's right.
And so I kind of get it when you're looking at a healthcare administration point of view. It's like, well, if we could spend an hour and a half with every patient every time we see them, sure, we can go into, let's consider what what are you eating, how are you approaching like strength training, your activity. And if you have a motivated individual, which I'd consider the bottom-up approach, which is like, well, I'm going to go and do some of this research myself. I'm going to come to my own understanding and then find a practitioner who aligns with this and probably pay more because I need to get more of their time to get a good consult. Then I kind of understand it. So I don't like it. I understand how we've ended up there. I also think there could be more done at a younger age in schools. Schools, high schools, they should be introducing the concept of strength training in physical ed way more than they are at the moment.
Yes.
You know, I don't know, I think the US is actually a little bit better than we are, but our physical education growing up in the UK is you basically go out on a freezing cold pitch, play football, hockey, rugby, or some other sprint kind of box training, and it's just running around.
Yeah.
I would like to see, which would require probably a decent chunk of investment and a complete mentality shift, full weight rooms being kitted out in high schools particularly, where you have physical education coaches taking every boy, girl, child through progressive strength training so they have a base knowledge of how to do it so they're not scared to go into a gym, and then they get the educational component of the reason we're doing this is it's going to matter a lot. Not necessarily today, like it still matters today in terms of your durability, but younger people are typically more resilient, like even their ligaments are more elastic if you look at a child versus an older person. So they're less prone to injury, but that's the point to educate people, is to get it in the psyche at that age and give them the confidence that even if they stop for 10 years, or 15 years, between 15 and 30, and then at 30 they pick it back up, that's going to make a huge difference by the time they're 50.
Yes.
And so I think that's like where you'd really need to intervene here. Because I do think sometimes with healthcare, we need to push it back on the individual.
I agree. I think because I remember when I was, young, that they would make us do specific exercise, like get down to do leg lifts, wall sits like you're sitting in a chair, but of course they never teach us like what we're training that for. And now I remember one doctor told me, he says, one of the best things you could ever do is learn how to do push-ups. I know people say, oh, push-up. And he goes, no, one of the greatest reductions of mortality, and he gave a demographic of older people, is because their ability to catch themselves if they fell forward is because they have no arm strength and they would buckle. And I thought, well, we don't see that being taught.
People often ask, why would we need to train type 2 muscle fibers in older people? It's like, well, think about when they stumble. That like reactionary force, that's a type 2 muscle fiber reaction, right? Like that ability to catch themselves so they don't then fall and break a hip, that's type 2. So like, they might not be doing powerlifting or heavy strength training all the time, but their ability, this comes back to the original thesis of like muscle health is the forgotten vital health indicator. Like not only, and again, it massively, there's a very tight correlation between your muscular health and risk of cardiovascular disease. And I think everybody understands cardiovascular disease is the biggest killer worldwide, right? Heart attack, stroke, peripheral artery disease, hypertension, all of these things. There's a tight correlation between your muscular health and your risk of cardiovascular disease. It comes back to not only the sort of risk of death, but these minor interactions you have on a day-to-day, getting out of bed as you age, muscular health, being able to catch yourself when you fall, muscular health, not getting injured because you stepped off of a curb or had an unintended like trip or stumble, muscular health. And you interact with it every moment of your waking life.
It definitely does. And when we talked about this, and you mentioned it, that we talked about, unfortunately, like our grandparents, like my grandmother broke a hip, and it started her decline. And I have a lot of patients that have that. And you talked about, when we're talking about the targeted compression training, it would be beneficial, I'm asking, that if they had like a device like Suji to like be around the joints to like increase the vascular flow into the joint? Yeah,
so kind of, you always wear the compression garment, in our case, at the top of the limb, regardless of what you're trying to achieve. So like if it's lower body, or you're doing some sort of exercise that requires lower body interaction. And that extends beyond just like bodyweight squats and lunges. That could be compression walks is something that's becoming very, very popular. Stationary bicycle cycling at a low RPM is also very popular. Or you can wear it around the top of the limbs if you're focusing more on an upper body exercise, so right at the top of the arms. And when you're talking about kind of increasing blood flow, what you can do is either active or passively, so kind of watching television, sitting on a sofa, on a bed, is use the compression garments in what we call a recovery mode, which is basically where it will go through a cycle lasting 10 to 30 minutes. You choose what you want to do. And essentially it goes through inflate, deflate, cyclical compression cycle. So it will compress for 3 minutes and then decompress for a minute, and it will repeat that a number of times to fill the maximum allotted time. This is doing several things, but one of the things that it does, which talks to what you're asking around increasing blood flow, contrary to what people might think is like, well, you're compressing it and you're reducing blood flow momentarily and then you're unrestricting it, increasing blood flow. So wouldn't you overall reduce the average flow of blood flow throughout the time? No, there's actually an effect called reactive hyperemia, which means that throughout the same time period of that 30-minute block, if you just did nothing, you would have less blood flowing through that area than if you do the compression cycling. And one of the understandings for this, or the beliefs, is that because you're, similar to hot-cold therapy, because you're restricting and then dilating the blood vessels, the arteries, you actually make them more elastic, and the blood, your heart rate increases because you're making it pump harder during those moments of restriction. The overall blood flowing through the area throughout that same duration of time increases per, in terms of average amount of blood flow.
So
the effect called reactive hyperemia is pretty well understood.
I've got to write that down.
Yeah,
reactive hyperemia.
And so understood.
When you're doing that, when you go into that point where you are expanding and contracting the artery, you're saying it's almost like giving your arteries a workout.
Yeah, like that's actually one of the. It's not even something we kind of coined. Some of the research is kind of talking to this now as well. And this has been understood before, where this isn't Suji related work, but hypertensive patients have reduced resting blood, or they believe, some research has observed that hypertensive patients have reduced their resting blood pressure, not through the pharmaceutical intervention, but just through the act of taking their blood pressure every morning.
No, that's amazing, because you could actually, I've got, my whole family's had blood pressure issues.
Yeah.
And so if you put it on your arm, like let's say, of course, like you had an arm injury, doing it on your leg or on your arm, would that also help the rest of the body? Because helping your heart, would it help the blood flow in the rest of the body?
So that's one of the cool things with targeted compression training, or scientifically known as blood flow restriction training, is a lot of the effects are systemic. So if I kind of rewind a bit and lay a bit more context of how to kind of use it, I think will be helpful. Essentially, if people are trying to listening to this and build a mental picture of what this looks like, or a mental concept, you can imagine something that's similar but slightly different to a blood pressure cuff, worn on both arms with no cables. And you can either choose to do an active or passive intervention, and this depends on what you're trying to achieve. So active, of course, being doing some very low intensity level of exercise, walking, lunging, stationary bike, or climbing the stairs, stair climber. Or passive, which is literally just remaining still whilst you're on the sofa, lying down, or in your bed. You can imagine yourself watching Netflix or scrolling your phone if you wanted to kind of pass the time. The active intervention use cases typically focus on achieving a reduced pain state, specifically in the joints or the musculature, or building muscular strength, or improving your muscular health. And so if I talk to the reducing or the active capacity, this would look like wearing that compression garment that's similar but different to a blood pressure cuff, with no cables on both limbs typically, and going through some very low intensity level of exercise. So that could be walking with it on whilst it's compressing the limb. That could be doing bodyweight squats or lunges whilst it's compressing the limbs. That could be on a stationary bike. It could be climbing stairs. And essentially what's happening here is we are mimicking the same muscular environment as high intensity exercise. We're recruiting type 2 muscle fibers and we're increasing metabolic stress. And because we're momentarily, not completely by the way, but momentarily allowing blood flow into the musculature or the muscle, the working muscle group, but restricting it from coming back out, the heart has to work harder to pump blood flow around the rest of the body. And so you increase the cardiovascular load. And essentially all we're doing is with a very low exercise dose, so low intensity exercise, bodyweight exercise, we're mimicking the same environment as a very high intensity exercise session.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so you can achieve reductions. You could use it as a warm-up prior to exercise to get rid of joint pain or stiffness, reduce pain sensitivity, take it off. So you could imagine somebody who likes to play tennis, somebody who plays golf, who runs or does whatever. They could use this for 7 to 10 minutes immediately prior to exercise, take the device off, and then go and have a 2 to 24 hour reduced pain state to do their activity, and have more enjoyment and have no, not be inhibited because of joint pain or stiffness. If you stack those sessions up 3-4 times a week over 8 weeks, or do dedicated physical therapy like sessions where you're doing it in your living room, or you're doing it in your home, your gym, whatever, you'll be able to increase muscular strength, tendon strength, and even bone density, so that not only will you improve your muscle health, but as I mentioned before, that can significantly reduce your long-term experience with joint pain and stiffness.
Wow.
So this is really cool because it suddenly gives people who are contraindicated from normal high-intensity exercise, that could be somebody post-surgically, that could be somebody with acute injury, that could be somebody who's aging and just has joint pain and stiffness. It could be somebody who just doesn't like normal strength training.
That's what exactly.
They don't want to.
Yeah.
And it's really efficient because it requires body weight, not a lot of equipment. You just wear these compression garments as you're doing it. A typical session is 10 to 15 minutes. So it's really not intrusive on your normal activities of daily living. And where the sort of research is now expanding into is chronic disease patients. And I will give a caveat, there are still contraindicators to using it. Typically things that are associated with a prior negative or cardiovascular history. So that could be something like a stroke or a heart attack.
Yeah.
The reason for that is not because there's data to say it's dangerous, it's because there's not enough data at the moment to say categorically it's safe. However, the rule of thumb that people are following, and there's a lot of buy-in from the medical community, surgeons, physical therapists, is if you're cleared to do normal high-intensity exercise, if you buy equipment like Suji that properly employs targeted compression training, like it sets the compression level based on your blood pressure, so you can never over-compress, and you can standardize the level of compression personalized to you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a really critical part of it, right? Because you don't want to fully restrict blood flow.
No, exactly.
That would do the opposite thing.
Yeah.
It would actually
amazing.
make your muscular health worse.
Yeah.
So it's really important, and it's also important for the standardization of exercise because the intensity of that session will vary based on the level of compression. But we're really pushing the boundary in some respect, helping support research going on in we have a paper about to go live where they're using Suji in an at-home COPD intervention.
Tell us about that, man.
So I can't say a lot because we're not privy to the research. But the research design and the sort of basic premise is that COPD patients, from what I understand, would benefit tremendously from the outcomes of exercise. The difficulty they have because of their COPD is that they can't do normal high intensity exercise because they fatigue way too quickly.
Yeah.
Just to kind of give premise to people who might not be aware, they can fatigue walking up the stairs, right? Like it becomes very difficult to do any normal sort of form of exercise that we take for granted. The premise here was, well, what if we introduce targeted compression training, have them walk up the same stairs where they can do it but be fatigued, but now they're going to get an actual exercise benefit from it. They're going to increase their cardiovascular load, similar to normal high intensity exercise. They're going to increase their muscular strength and their overall muscle health, and therefore hopefully offset some of the implications that are associated with the COPD. This paper is in review right now and it's going to be published soon, and we're excited to see it.
Yeah.
We haven't seen any of the data yet because we supported it in just by loan of equipment. We didn't pay for it. It was just loan of equipment. It's actually sponsored, I believe, by our National Health Service here in the UK.
Would they do that? I mean, sidestep, would COPD, and I'm not trying to get into a whole COVID talk or something, but are they trying to figure out maybe it would help the lungs in that area?
People have actually asked that question, and we said, look, we can support any, I always try to be careful that I don't stray into exercise phys or into healthcare because I'm an engineer, but obviously read on certain use cases. We were approached about long COVID specifically and using it in those indications by some researchers, and we said, hey, look, we'll loan equipment and you can use it for your study, and just give us a little footnote, like a hey, this is what it is, and you guys do the research. Like, we don't want to influence it in any way. We don't want financial interest in it. We're just going to loan equipment out because it's great for us to prove the validity of what we're doing. Obviously, the COPD one got funded. One in multiple sclerosis got funded, MS, with the guys at the University of Central Florida. I don't believe the long COVID one got funded because we didn't hear anything after that.
Yeah.
So not bad thought. I just don't know if anybody's doing anything in it at the moment. But people have explored the idea at least.
That's what I love about like the research when you're talking about muscular strength and blood flow. So like if we talked about people with MS and talk about neuromuscular or neurological type conditions, because a lot of my patients, they MS, Parkinson's, and I'm not saying it cures or anything. I'm just saying,
no, of course.
But the studies are still coming in. But have people come to you saying like, can this help this kind of stuff to just help the blood flow in the arms and legs?
We launched a consumer line of business this year, where we took our Generation 2 technology and are taking it into the home. We've focused our energies most on targeting active adults with joint pain and stiffness who want to get rid of their joint pain, stiffness, and build their muscular health rapidly to be able to do their sports. That could be pickleball, tennis, golf, whatever, running, cycling, whatever. We do get tickets regularly from customer support tickets regularly with people inquiring about different use cases. And again, we would be very careful because we don't want to offer medical advice.
Yeah.
And we are an FDA registered product, so we've got to be very careful around obviously the claim sets that we make and everything. We take that very seriously. But what I think is really promising and exciting, and we support some of this research, but not all of it, is the application of targeted compression training generally is now having been accepted in post-operative use cases, active adults, athletic adults, aging adults. It's now broadening into MS, COPD, kidney failure patients. There's some work that we're not involved with that I believe is going on in Australia, where they're using it in cancer patients undergoing treatment as a way to offset muscular atrophy.
That's amazing.
Because the treatment typically exhausts the patient. It's very difficult for them to go and do high intensity exercise whilst going through a course of chemotherapy.
Yes.
And so they're looking at this as an intervention that takes 10, 15 minutes. They're doing something as simple as walking, and they offset. Again, I've not read this. I believe this research is ongoing, so it's not published yet. But they're trying to offset the muscular atrophy effects, and I'm excited to see the outcomes of this.
I am too. I mean, to me, like my mom's health, and the people that come to me, they, like you said, some of them physiologically just don't have like a lot of the energy per se. Like I don't even want to get up.
Yeah.
And to see something like this would be such a huge benefit.
Yeah, and you can introduce it progressively. So that could start with a passive use case where they're on their sofa, or their couch, in their living room or in their bed, and they can literally start with 20, 30 minutes of these compression cycles. And that's just the starting point. It's like, hey, let's get some reactive hyperemia, increasing the average blood flow through the limbs. It'll trigger things like HG1, and so that will be helpful in terms of just, with their musculature, and then step them into, okay, we've done 2 weeks of this. Let's just put this on you and go for a walk.
Yeah.
Right, let's just go for a walk.
That's right.
And then let's do 2 weeks of this. It's like, okay, now let's go and do 20 bodyweight squats or 10 bodyweight squats, and let's do 2, 3, 4 sets of these. And what's really exciting with targeted compression training is you can increase the stimulus by varying the compression. So if you have an individual who doesn't want to lift heavy, you can achieve a progressive overload effect by increasing the level of compression and the time under compression. And so again, particularly for older or aging adults, where they're like, I don't want to lift a heavy weight, I don't want to increase my weight, I like this dumbbell, or I like no weight at all, or whatever. It becomes really cool because it's like, okay, they're going to continue doing this 15-minute walk that they love. They're not going to work further, and they don't want to walk faster.
Yeah.
How do we achieve that progressive overload effect so that we, again, offset the loss of muscular health as they age? Yeah. Well, maybe every 6 weeks we increase the level of compression up until, we know there's a maximum that we can go, and then increase the time under compression. So maybe you start with, we deflate every 2 minutes, but in 8 weeks we're going to deflate every 6 minutes. So you're increasing that stimulus again and helping them maintain that muscular health. So it gives you a new variable to play with, which is really cool.
That's cool because, like, on the device, though, can they set it like right on the device, or do they have like an app?
It's an app, yeah. So, and which I think is really important. I'm where my speciality sits as or sort of expertise. I love product, and when I talk about loving product, I love the engineering, but I also love the sort of consumer psychology element in there as well, right? Like, consumer psychology is so fascinating, particularly with new product generation, because there's a whole boatload of things we should all do, but just don't. Because of laziness, lack of interest, lack of knowledge, whatever it is. Typically as people, we like to take the fast track to everything. I think a great example of this, and a timely one, is like the GLP-1s that everybody's jumping on. It's like, you could just exercise. But, a lot of people are leaning on GLP-1s because it's so much easier. And so with with Suji, being able to introduce something that doesn't require the individual to do more, actually we're just increasing the level of compression up and so far within a safe remit. The device will make sure that happens. Bringing the app into it actually gives you guided sessions. So you can come in, complete the onboarding, which includes that sort of health check where we go through this calibration to make sure we know your safe compression levels and everything else. You can connect your Apple Health or your wearable so that you can bring some other data in.
Yeah,
and see the impact over time. It's actually really cool. If you put an Apple Watch on and watch your heart rate and do the same exercise with Suji and then without it, you'll see a significant lift. So you can actually see immediately, and the muscular fatigue is very real, so you feel it immediately as well. And so with coming back to kind of the app portion of it, the reason that we're so focused on creating a great in-app experience is because we could go down the route of just on-off with something directly on the device. The problem with that is it would require somebody to know what to do. And if you have a device just arrive at your house and it's a compression garment and you're just like, hey, use this.
Yeah.
Most people would be kind of like, how?
Yeah.
So when you come in, you complete the health check, we establish your safe compression levels, we learn some information about you, we have a getting started piece where we have video content showing you how to place the compression garment, what it should feel like, and talking you through, and then you can choose based on outcome, muscle group, use case to follow world-renowned athletes or medical professionals through guided sessions. And so you can watch a little coaching thing and then hit start. The devices will inflate to a compression level that's completely based on you and your blood pressure data, and then do your session and take it off. A session should, other than the passive use case, a session should last 7 to 15 minutes, and then the passive can be 10 to 30 minutes. So it's really convenient and easy.
That's what I was thinking too. Like if an individual could have it set and you did they got all the biometrics in there, and do they typically if they have it set on their watch, of course you said do a certain span, do you like, everybody's by individual, but do you like a person doing their sessions for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or what is the length of it?
Always depends on your goal. We see customers purchase Suji because they have joint pain, stiffness, or they have an injury, acute or post-surgical. We see a lot of physical therapists and surgeons refer people through to purchase the equipment. And they're using it initially for a very intended use case. So like, my knee hurts, I just had surgery on my ACL, I just had a knee replacement. And so they'll start using it to target muscle strengthening, and that will be their primary form of exercise whilst they're unable to do normal high intensity exercise. Once they get back into being able to do their normal high intensity exercise, they'll continue using it mostly for the passive recovery, because you can come home at night, you could sit there with your loved one, your family, whatever. You can throw Netflix on, which is most people's evening routines. And they can throw their legs up and they can go through a compression cycle. And when they take it off, not only will they feel much better, a lot of people describe it, the after effect is like walking on clouds. Your feet feel very light. Which is a nice feeling. But then a lot of anecdotal. So just feedback from customers being, I slept well better. Like I feel a lot less sore when I wake up in the morning. I feel happier. I feel better as I use it. And so the continued use case, use cases vary heavily because if you're using it as muscle strengthening because of an injury, that will be like 3 15-minute sessions, 4 15-minute sessions a week. Physical therapy is the sort of mental concept. If you're doing it for joint pain or stiffness that's getting in the way of an activity, it's literally a 7-minute warm-up before you do your activity, then you take it off. So every time you're going to go and step on the tennis court or play pickleball or padel or golf or whatever, you literally put it on for 7 minutes, do some very low intensity level of movement. So that could be lunges, it could be simply walking in some instances. It could be body weight squats. You take it off and you put it away, and the frequency of use there really is dictated by how active you are being. But it varies tremendously. We see on the younger, it's interesting, all of our data is aggregated and anonymized, and we look at cohort data. And we typically break this down by age buckets. So this could be, and the most striking one to me is under 40s in our recent consumer line of business have purchased more equipment, but log like an average of 11.3 sessions per month, which is interesting to me because that aligns closely with working out 3 times a week.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
So it's quite like a tie. Over 40, the frequency of use skyrockets. We have one individual who is in their 50s in America who over, I think, a 50-day period has logged 153 sessions.
What?
And he's using it for, I believe, pain management and muscle strengthening. It's just his primary form of exercise at the moment. I don't know if he's injured, if he doesn't like normal high-intensity exercise, but this is his primary use case. And it just maps closely with, like, look, if you have I'm a big believer, if you can do normal high-intensity exercise, go and do that. Like, this shouldn't replace that fully. Yeah. But it should be, if you have joint pain or stiffness, this is your warm-up to help you overcome it so you can enjoy your exercise more and keep you active.
Yeah.
If you are somebody who doesn't do any strength training, this could be your primary form of exercise. If you don't like normal strength training, if it's too inconvenient, if it takes too long, if you don't like lifting heavy, if you have an injury, post-surgical acute, and I hope in the future, and I'll be very clear that I'm not recommending this right now, I hope that it becomes an intervention that is recommended for chronic disease patients in the future as well, when we prove it to be sufficiently safe to be used independently in the home as well.
I was just about to think about that too, because one of the hardest parts, and people out there listening, is that you want to prevent the pain, and you want something that could actually be used while you're sitting still. We recommend exercise, but in our day and age, everybody has to be in front of a computer most of the time. They can't move that well. Like most of the complaints I get or concerns is like, Doc, I would go do it, but I literally have to be at work at 6 a.m. and I have to go all day.
And that goes back to my point around I kind of almost went on a bit of a tangent about 5 minutes ago talking about product, and that kind of just triggered where I was trying to go with that. Is I think often there's very logical reasons as to why people should do things, and then there's life, right, which just kind of feeds in on top of it. And I think goes back to our conversation about, top down, bottom up, of like healthcare administrators think about public health, we go bottom up thinking about our own health. It's two different approaches. And it's the same thing here. If you think top down, 1 in 2 American adults will experience joint pain stiffness for 30 days or more in a given year, you should consider that every single one of them should strength train. Logically, of course. When you go bottom up and then you consider an individual and stop thinking about it public health, you say, let's take a random person here. Let's say, okay, I'm going to think about a 44-year-old who has 2 kids, is a busy professional, and likes to play, they like to play, they're part of a run club. They go running. For that 44-year-old, they're probably sleep deprived because they've got young kids. They're waking up in the morning, just scrambling to get the kids together and off to school, nursery, kindergarten, whatever it might be. They're then making it to work themselves, concerned about being late, probably having their breakfast on the go, already behind at work, trying to catch up, coming into lunch, either working their lunch or taking 1 hour just to try and decompress. They then may be leaving work a little bit early or going straight to a run club. That run club is probably for their physical health, but also their social circle. That's probably where their social interaction is as well. And this is where I think joint pain stiffness is a really interesting one, because if you then have something that precludes you from that run club, not only are you missing out on your physical health benefits and all of the dopamine and endorphins that come of it, you're missing out on your social life, because you're going to go home again and you've got your familial responsibilities to deal with. You've got the kids, you've got your partner, you've got everything else that's going on. When you consider all of this, saying to somebody, you should do an hour of strength training 4 times a week at a gym that's going to require you to travel there and back, you're suddenly like, that's actually a much bigger ask than going, 1 in 2 people have joint pain, everyone should strength train. It's like, we need to find things that help people conveniently achieve these outcomes in a way that already fits into their existing lifestyle.
That's right.
And so that could be simply walking the kids to school in the morning. They have something that's helping them build muscular strength. Or that could be taking a dog for a walk. Or that's, all of these responsibilities people always have. And I think that's where a lot of products or tech, and we're not perfect yet, by the way, we're still working on this, and it'll be continuous improvement and evolution. But that's where I think a lot of products fall down. There's a very logical reason that people should do things, but when you think about the bottom up, the individual level, the products often fail on so many levels that it's just way too difficult to integrate. And that's where people critique wearables. I'm wearing an Oura Ring, you're wearing a smartwatch. The reason we love these is they're passive. I put this on, and then I look at it maybe twice a week, and I look at my data, and I get something from it. If this required me to do something for 20 minutes every single day, it would probably have either not been bought or stopped being used after the first month.
That's
because that's a big ask when life happens.
That's right. When you think about the psychology of individuals, myself included, I think that people do make their decisions about how much there's going to be entailed for them to put into it, because their lives, like you just said, it's a lot. And one thing, though, I would say that I think that's often forgotten, you mentioned this too, is that with even just the immune system, we're just seeing it more and more now, that there are certain conditions, certain types of infections, certain types of microbes, and we're just studying, that do harden up the arteries, and that do make people stiff, and we don't know, we just want to live life. And having something like this where you can put it on, you can monitor it and get biometrics back and stuff. And people are going to love this because it makes you learn more about yourself. That's what I'm saying too.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think people love to learn more. And where we want to take this, and like comes back to sort of the primary thesis of Suji, is we want people, like we have a tagline which is play harder. And the whole purpose of that is we started an elite sport because these are individuals who understand the importance of muscular health because it's their job, and they're already using technology like ours. Like we currently supply 40% of all American sports teams across major pro, D1, D2, and D3 schools. We have a big presence in outpatient physical therapy. And the reason we launched the consumer line of business is because we believe strongly that all adults should be focused and have a convenient way to improve their muscular health, to let them play harder. So whether you're an individual, whether you're an elite athlete who's stepping onto, the sports field in the NFL, that's your play. Yeah. If you're a 44-year-old who likes to play pickleball, pedal, or go for a run, that's your play. If you're a 70-year-old grandparent who just walks every day and wants to play with your grandkids, that's your play. Yeah. And so the whole premise at Suji is just like bringing conscious awareness to the importance of muscular health so people can continue playing harder is just like such a critical part of being able to live an active, independent lifestyle, increase your health span, and hopefully reduce the impact of joint pain or stiffness, because it's such an inhibitor on your quality of life.
I'm with you, man. This is a great combo. I mean, I think that a lot of times patients come in, and the thing they always, literally, they'll say, I just want to be mobile, and I still want to have some of my mentality. Yeah. And I think that when we're talking about muscular health, and you described it perfectly, how it not only helps your heart, I mean, in the Chinese medicine world, and then they say fixing the heart and the pumping mechanism actually increases the brain because it's putting it right up into the brain, the blood flow. Yeah. And I mean, man, I like your engineer mind, because one of my mentors, he's an engineer, and he always will tell me everything in steps, and that's why I'm very mechanical, which I really love. So, I mean, people are going to ask, like, where do I get this? Like, we're going to have, like, will you send us all your info? We can put it in the show notes stuff. Like, how can they find you? How can they find Suji?
Yeah, so in terms of the company, head over to trysuji.com. I don't know if you can see for the t-shirt, but it's...
How'd you get the name?
So the name is actually part of the Japanese word for musculature. Part of, not the full name. And the reason for that is the first... use of targeted compression training, scientifically known as blood flow restriction training, starts in Japan about 70 years ago. Whoa. Which is quite relevant for your whole premise of this podcast, where East meets West, because it's now, the sort of push into America, the UK, and wider Europe in its use, I think it was about 20 years ago, maybe early 2000s. But the first stuff started in the East. And then came over here first. I think the first use case was post-operative ACL reconstruction was the first, like, hey, let's try it here. And now it's just blown up into, as I said, sort of post-operative acute injury management, aging adults, active adults, athletic adults. And now, now that it's been very well understood and accepted there, pushing more into chronic disease. But if people want to learn more or check us out, head over to trysuji.com, just trysuji.com. We're also the same handle on Instagram, trysuji. We have a newsletter, we have blogs going out, we feature really cool, customers with their consent. We talk to them and write about them. We just had a 71-year-old who is a big cyclist who uses Suji every single day. He said it's the first thing he packed. It winds his wife up. It was the first thing he packed on his recent vacation. So we tell some customer stories across the broad spectrum, elite athletes and everyday people. We talk to the thesis of muscular health, and then we talk specifically to the science and understanding of targeted compression training as well. So for people with broad or specific interest, it can be super interesting.
I'll tell you, I'm definitely going to talk about it more, and because there are so many people, they talk about, like, I treat a lot of patients in the office that have like Lyme infections or parasitic, and a lot of them they eat a lot of the cartilage, and so they'll ruin the joints. So this is like beautiful because it's going to help increase the blood flow.
They can build strength with low stress on the joints. It's awesome.
Man, you're a good dude. I can tell you're a cool guy. Guys, I really want to keep talking. This is a really good combo. But now you guys can look into this type of therapy because it is the wave of the future, especially the way the world is going. Man, we really appreciate you coming on here.
Thank you for having me on.
And guys, check out your website, check out his feed, and really we'll have like a code on the captions. And if you guys are suffering from joint pain, instability, stiffness, muscle problems, bone problems, check out all the info they have. And if you guys have any questions, send us comments and we can relate it over to Alex or just check him out, connect with him. Yep. So from all of us here at the Ancient Health Podcast, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Alex, so much, man.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
See you guys.